Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I have been working on since my breakup with my ex-PMDD partner. So if you listen to the podcast, a couple of months, I went on this healing retreat. And like I told you, if you look back a couple episodes, you'll see that I went on this retreat. Originally, it was something that my ex-PMDD partner got for me. And it was supposed to just be for me healing childhood trauma, healing anything from the past, because a lot of times during PMDD, these are a lot of things that came up for me. And we were on a marriage retreat, and this healing retreat was offered, and he actually got it for me. And then we ended up breaking up, and I still had the retreat because the retreat was like a year later. And what I ended up learning on that retreat was I ended up going at the perfect time. If I would have gone to the retreat at the exact time that he got it, I probably wouldn't have learned what I needed to learn because I would have been in a different season of my life. So because I had just broken up with my ex-PMDD partner, it was perfect timing to go to this healing retreat because I wanted to do some reflection. So here's what I want you to know about my relationship with my ex-PMDD partner. I remember initially I was thinking this relationship is a failure because it didn't last. And I was beating myself up about that. There was a lot of questioning, doubting, whether I made the right decision. And when I was questioning and doubting whether I made the right decision, it was because of the love that I had for my ex-PMDD partner. And it was almost like, how can I still love this person, but know that this is not the relationship for me at the stage of my life that I'm in? Like, I couldn't really figure that out. That's where the doubt was coming from. It wasn't a doubt that it was supposed to end. It was a doubt as to why I still had the same loving feelings, even despite everything that I had gone through. I just really, it was a confusing thing for me because I've been through breakups before where someone has done something horrible and cheated, and it was easier for me to walk away because there was infidelity. I mean, I've literally had it all. I've been robbed. I've had I've had exes rob me literally of money, possessions. I've been cheated on before. I've been a victim of bigamy where my ex-husband was still married to his ex-wife. I mean, I'm in the process of writing a book, so it'll be all in there, but I've gone through a lot of breakups. And this one particularly was, hurtful for me because I had built such a future in my mind about being with my ex-PMDD partner that I didn't have a plan B. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so this retreat was very much needed because I was all over the place. Nothing was sure anymore. I had gone years where I knew what my plan was. I was going to retire, move to Panama with my partner, and we were going to live a good life on the beach. And we were, I was still going to do my business, my counseling business. we were, it was going to be amazing. We had similar interests. We were going to stay active and work out and help people and all of these things. And when we broke up, it's like everything that I had planned before, I was almost unsure about it. I think that rhymes. Like everything that I had planned before was now unsure. Ooh, that's a good one. And I remember trying to put things in its place, like make new plans and be like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I just got to a point where I was like really exhausted and looking for answers. So when this retreat came up, I actually got an email about it, and it was like an email reminder, like we're 2 weeks away or we're, something. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe, I'm going on this retreat. I can't believe I'm doing this. And so I went there, and I went there as a victim. I'm not going to lie. I went there as a victim because there were a lot of things that happened towards the end of my PMDD relationship with my ex, and I felt wronged. I felt like I had been done wrong. I felt like I had been treated wrong. I felt like I wasn't I wasn't being given the amount of effort that I was putting in, because towards the end of my relationship, I was killing myself to save my relationship. And what I mean by that, I was emotionally like spent. I was like, hey, we need to talk about this. Hey, we need to talk about that. Hey, we need to do that. And I was consistently met with, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. Like my ex was going through so much in his life that it almost was like our relationship was a burden. That's how I felt. Again, this is only my side of the story, but I felt like I gave it every chance not to fail. And I was like waving the red flag saying, hey, we're in trouble. Like we need to take the time that we have. I know you have things going on, but we need to take the time that we have in order to work on our relationship, work on our problems. But it was almost like because things weren't going right for him, he wasn't in a relationship to work on our relationship. I understand that a lot better now. From the outside looking in, now that I've kind of detached from the relationship, I couldn't understand it while I was in it, because I kept thinking to myself, if you claim to love me so much, if you claim to want this marriage to work, why are you not putting in the effort in the way that I'm telling you the effort needs to be put in? Not in the way that you think, but the way that I'm telling you. When there's two people in a relationship, and I tell this to my private clients all the time, you could be killing yourself doing all of these things for your partner, but if it's not in a way that they're needing to receive love from you, then you're wasting your time. Meaning, if my love language is physical touch, and my love language is words of affirmation, and my love language is quality time, let's say that's my top three, and you're out doing chores for me, you're changing the tires, you're going out, you're doing this, like all of these things that are acts of service, I'm not receiving it. So you're wasting your time because it's not landing with the person that it's meant to land with. So yes, within yourself, you can say, I'm putting forth effort. I'm doing what it takes to make this relationship work. But if you're not considering your partner when you're putting forth your effort, then you're really doing it for yourself. And that's what I learned. It's an ego thing. If you sometimes when you want to feel like you're putting forth effort in your relationship, you'll do things that you're comfortable with. You'll do things that make you feel good. You'll do things that you're proud of. You do things that you actually want to do. You'll do things that you're good at. But a lot of times, the love language of your PMDD partner is not necessarily the one that is most comfortable for you. You may feel more comfortable doing acts of service when your PMDD partner really needs you to just hold them and cuddle with them and kiss on them and love on them. And because you have so much pride and ego, and you're not willing to lay aside the way that you want to show love for the sake of your partner, then it's not landing. You're wasting your time. So when you get into those conversations and your partner's like, I don't feel loved, they don't feel loved because you're not loving them in the way that they can receive it. And so that's where I was. I was really in this place of feeling like I was very communicative with my ex-PMDD partner towards the end. And I was just like, this is what I need. This is what we need in order to make it work. And I was very clear because I'm very pretty much assumptions lead to destruction. If you're thinking like, oh, they know what they need to do, I don't believe in that. That's why I'm a counselor. That's why I believe in counseling, because if you're assuming that your partner knows what you're talking about, I can guarantee you they don't know what you're talking about, because they get on private sessions with me and you say the truth, because I'll ask you the real questions, the real hard questions. You'll answer me, and the looks that I see on the partner's face lets me know that they have no idea that that was in your mind. They had no idea that that's what you wanted. They had no idea that that's what you needed, because the communication is not there. So stop assuming that you know what your partner needs. Like, just because they needed that at one point doesn't mean that that's what they need moving forward. And a lot of times we get stuck in that again with the ego and the pride. It's like, oh, I know what they need. No, you don't. Because if you did, then they wouldn't be unhappy. If you knew what to do, you wouldn't be in the situation that you're in. So you have to humble yourself. So when I went to this conference, I was very much, it was like a conference, it was a healing, like it was a retreat. I'm sorry, it was a healing retreat. When I went to this, I was in the mindset of I was feeling broken. I was feeling mishandled. I felt like the love that I had was not appreciated in a way where I was thinking to myself, if someone loved me, again, I'm on the outside looking in, if someone loved me the way that I loved my partner, and and then they said that they were going to leave me, I would fight for them. I would. So me and my ex-PMDD partner were long distance. And if he said to me, if the situation was reversed and he's like, hey, this is not working for me, um I don't know what to do, blah blah blah, like this is not going to work, and I really felt like I wasn't putting forth the effort, or I wanted to make it work, I didn't want to lose my partner, I would be on a plane at their front door fighting for my marriage, fighting for my relationship. And what I was met with was, well, all right, if that's what you want to do, like just be sure that this was your decision. Like there was no connection. We had gotten to a point where the intimacy was so gone that there was not even this. I mean, when I think about it, with my ex, we were friends. We were really good friends in the beginning of our relationship. And that's what connected us. Our lifestyle was very similar, and we connected on that. And towards the end, our lifestyle was very different. And I remember that being a key factor in the breakup for me, because we were long distance, the things that we did have in common that were connecting us were no longer a thing. He no longer did a morning routine anymore. One of the ways that we connected was through our morning routine. And like we would get up and like send sweaty selfies and tell each other how much we loved each other, and really just send those vibes and that energy that, like, even though we were apart, I felt so close. And that's why I was so okay with being long distance, because even though we were thousands of miles apart for the majority of our relationship, I felt so close. And then when we saw each other, it was just like we were like, matching the energy that we had in the beginning. But towards the end, it was not that way. And I was mourning the loss of what I thought was my best friend, what I thought was my life partner, what I thought was my everything. And I felt like I had given so much, and not to say he didn't show any effort, but I said like, hey, this is what I need right now from you, and I can't get it from anyone else. And if you're my private client, I tell this to you all the time. Your intimate partner can only get intimacy from you morally. If they're going outside of the relationship, that's not the right answer. And so I was in a situation where I was feeling like, man, I felt like I lost everything. Everything that I was certain about outside of my daughter, my career, my business, anything personal. I had lost it, and I was prepared to go there, and I felt like I was in victim mode. And so we went through the retreat and we did a lot of journaling. And then we had group sessions where we sat down, we talked about things. And one of the things that the leader called me out on was something that I didn't want to hear. I remember when they called me out. I remember what my first episode on the In Love with PMDD podcast was, call your partner out. And I got called out. I got called out. And she said, you've gone through childhood trauma in your past, and your childhood trauma was triggered by your partner. Because we noticed the similarities where my adopted father was verbally abusive. So therefore, hearing my partner speak in a way that was aggressive was a trigger for me. Again, and I said this before, some people can handle that. And that's fine. I feel like he would be an amazing partner for someone that could handle that. That's what I started to see. Because when I asked him to not do that, I was like, hey, we would be fine if when we argue, you just didn't yell or you just didn't curse. And he was just like, I can't do that. Like, that's pretty much part of who I am. And he was calling it charismatic and passionate and all of these amazing terms for what I was considering verbal abuse. Because when I heard yelling, when I heard cursing, I cringed. That's a PTSD response. That's a post-traumatic stress response. That's not something that I don't think will ever change. If you look in the DSM, the diagnostic of statistical medicine that all of the doctors use to diagnose you, when you have PTSD, it is not a curable disorder. There are ways to manage it. There's ways to navigate it. But once you have gone through that traumatic event, just like if you go to war, those triggers are going to always be your triggers. You can't erase the triggers, but you can find a way to manage them. And so for me, when there's yelling and cursing, I react in a way that's like that fight or flight. I'm either really combative. Like earlier in our relationship, I believe in the beginning when I used to be met in arguments where I used to be met with that kind of response, the yelling and cursing. I used to yell and curse back. I remember. And it was horrible because my level, it's like almost like if you don't yell and you don't curse, that when you do, it's cutthroat. You ever heard that saying, like, be careful about the quiet ones because they're the ones that'll like chop your head off, like verbally and stuff like that. Like, that's how I am. That's why I don't like that version of myself. I don't like that version of myself where I'm yelling and cursing because there's like no holds bar. I go below the belt. It's not a version of myself, especially when I'm in PMDD, that I am proud of. And in the beginning of the relationship, I believe the first 2 years when I was in PMDD, that used to happen. I remember after that those 2 years, I vowed to not do that anymore. After 2020, I can honestly say I didn't go there anymore. 2018 to 2020, yes, I had a whole bunch of them because when your voice is raised, I felt like I had to defend myself. And I'm not making excuses because for me, it's not acceptable. Like it's a horrible treatment to yell and curse at your partner, point blank, period. There's no excuse. And I did it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to find a way to control this. So my way of controlling it became the opposite. So I went from fight to flight. I would just shut down, which is stonewalling, which is also a form of abuse. And I would just not say anything, which would aggravate my partner even more. And so we went through that cycle, but I just refused to allow myself to get back to that place of cussing and arguing because it brought out a side of me that was like unrecognizable. So when I was at that retreat and I was just ready to say, like, these are the reasons why we got the divorce, why we broke up. And she was saying, you got verbally and physically abused as a child. You supposedly healed from it. And then you get in this relationship and someone's showing you this behavior. And you have this, because you've been abused and because you have childhood trauma, you're now entitled. Like you have a level of entitlement. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like I was offended, the big O. And I was offended. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, because a lot of people that have had prior trauma from childhood or past relationships, when they get in another relationship, there's this level of entitlement, meaning because I've been abused before, I will not accept this abuse anymore. And I am now feeling entitled to a certain level of treatment. And for me, initially I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with expecting and or demanding a certain amount of fair treatment, of good treatment. And she was like, no, that's wrong. And I was just like, what? So we had opportunities, we had breaks after our sessions, and we got a chance to like go to our room and journal and walk around the property and just spend time really letting the information that we got from the group settings really sink in. And I remember being really resistant to it. And then on day 3, I was looking back at all of my breakups, looking back at all of my relationships, not just with past partners, but even with family members. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm entitled. I'm an entitled little princess. And I'm an entitled little princess because I was never treated like a princess. I was never given that gentle, nice, kind, loving treatment. So now I felt like if anyone didn't treat me a certain way, I would either punish them or dismiss them, break up with them, get rid of them. It was a pattern for me. I got to a point where I would ask you, like, hey, I need you to treat me this way. And then if you didn't treat me that way, because that's the way that I felt like I deserved, then I would just break up. And PMDD helped with that. PMDD ignited that. PMDD encouraged that. But my breakup with my PMDD partner was not PMDD based, outside of the fact that I strongly do believe, and this will be in the book, I strongly do believe that my partner was in love and loved the follicular me. He loved me in my follicular phase and even my ovulation. He loved me where we're compatible, all of these things. And when I got into PMDD, he didn't like me. He didn't like me. When I got internal, it was almost like just almost like it's not a person that he would ever date or be with. And I don't blame him. I had to humble myself. When I was at that retreat, I was not going there expecting to be having the finger pointed back at me. Not that it's about blame or anything, but I was just expecting to get some healing from my suffering, from being the victim of a relationship that had just, even though I was the one that initiated the breakup, I was feeling like I needed someone to pretty much feel sorry for me. And guess what? That's another form of entitlement. I was pretty much demanding this treatment of, I'm so sorry this happened to you, you poor little wounded bird. And I was just like, wow, it took a lot. And it even takes a lot out of me to let you know about this, because I don't intentionally want to harm anyone ever. That is never, I'm going to cry. That's never my intention ever. I don't have intentions of being superior and demanding anything. And I realized in a lot of my relationships, I did this. And it really breaks my heart to recognize this, because I didn't mean to feel entitled. I didn't mean to act entitled. I just masked it as having standards, knowing my self-worth, knowing what I deserve. And there's a fine line between having standards and knowing what you deserve, and having self-love and self-worth and confidence, to feeling entitled. And that's why I want to go over it today, so you know the difference between the two. So what entitlement is in a relationship, it is having unrealistic expectations of your partner and what they should provide to you. So the first way that you are entitled in your relationship is you're demanding constant attention. So I'm going to go over a couple of these ways that you can be entitled in your relationship, and then I'm going to get into the PMDD aspect of it. But I'm going to give you some examples of some of the things I am guilty of, and some of the things I'm not. So I really want to like go through all of them so that you can see what you resonate with. And the first thing I want you to do is be very humble. I want you to humble yourself right now. I want you to let that pride go, let that ego go, because you're never going to be able to accept what I'm about to tell you if you're in this place of trying to defend yourself. That was me. Remember, I heard this on day like 1 of the retreat. And by it took me to day 3 to even admit. Like no, I think it was day 4. It was like a 5-day retreat. And it was day 4. And we had to do our closing, comments on like, and within the group and just saying what we got out of it. And I looked at her with tears in my eyes. And I said, I didn't want to hear what you told me. I didn't want to hear it. I thought it wasn't me. I thought the message was for somebody else, but I sat with it. And this is what I do with my private clients when we're working together. A lot of times, sometimes when we're on private sessions, I say things that you don't necessarily want to hear. And I know that, but I say it out of love because I love you enough to tell you what you need to hear to make the changes that you need to make for your relationship to get better. And most importantly, for your suffering to be reduced. Because I was in a place of suffering, because I was feeling like I was the victim and I needed my partner to come save me. And one of the things that I learned when I was in this retreat was you can't go back to the place that hurt you in order to heal you. And I'm going to repeat that because I really want that to really sit with you. You can't go back to the place that hurt you, the person that hurt you, to heal you, to get your healing, to make you feel better. And so many times when you're in your PMDD relationship, you're thinking, you hurt me. You said something to hurt my feelings. You need to make me feel better. This is a sense of entitlement. So let's get right into it. It's the demanding constant attention, expecting your partner to always be available to you, regardless of their needs, regardless of their schedule, regardless of their responsibility, regardless of their work schedule, all of the things. Like you don't really care what they have going on. You just expect them to give you that attention that you're wanting in the moment. Meaning, if they're working from home, then you're expecting them to stop what they're doing when you walk in the room because you're there. If they're at work and you're blowing up their phone, you're expecting them to stop the meeting because you're there. Everything revolves around you because you have that sense of entitlement. You don't have any compassion for what they have going on to be like, oh, I know that you have this going on, blah, blah, blah. You could care less. You're like, I text you, why didn't you answer? And they'll go to explain to you what they had going on and you'll listen to it, but you'll continuously berate them and shame them and blame them for not answering your text, for not answering your call, for not stopping what they're doing. You'll even say, if you loved me, you would do this. If you loved me, you would have answered the phone. If you loved me, you would have stopped what you're doing. If you loved me, you would put me first. You will try to take what they deem as important and as a sense of survival and use it to manipulate them into feeling like they should revolve their whole life around you because you're entitled. Another example of this is getting upset when your PMDD partner spends time with their friends. Everything could be going great when they're laying up on the couch with you and then they say they're going to go out with friends. They mention their friend's name and your mood changes, your vibe changes. And even if you don't say anything, you're almost punishing them because they're now feeling guilty for going out and spending time with their friends because you're switching up, because you're changing. So some of them, I know a lot of my private clients, they'll be like, oh, forget it. I'm not even going to hang out with my friends because if I do, it's going to be a problem. And it's almost like I'd rather not even deal with that problem. Or if they try to do hobbies that don't involve you, all of a sudden you have an issue with it and you'll guilt trip them into not doing them. You'll say, yeah, go do that thing. Go play tennis, go play golf, go do this. But because they know that you have an attitude, they'll choose not to do it because you're not being supportive and being like, yeah, babe, I'd love that for you. Like, I hope you have a great time. You're responding in a way that you're feeling entitled and like you have a problem with them doing that. The next way that you're entitled in your relationship is you're expecting special treatment. You're believing that you deserve special favors or treatment just because of who you are, and you don't reciprocate the treatment. It's like, hey, I want a massage, rub my back, but you're not willing to rub their back. Hey, I want to take a bath and relax and have all of this quality time for myself, but you're not willing to give it to them. It's not an even slate. You're expecting it's special treatment because it's you. And another example is this expecting your partner to always do the chores that you dislike without, making sure that it's equal. You don't like to do dishes, so you're always leaving the dishes for them. You don't like to fold laundry, so you're always leaving the laundry for them. And then you may even say things that are condescending, like, oh, you're so much better at it than me. You have that sense of entitlement. You just know that they're going to do it. If you leave the dishes out and they have a problem with the dirty kitchen, that they're going to clean them. You begin to take them for granted. And that goes into the next way that you're entitled in the relationship is a lack of appreciation. So you take your partner's efforts for granted. You don't expect acknowledgement for them or gratitude. Instead of expressing gratitude, you say, oh, yeah, well, I did something too. How many times did your partner cook dinner, cooked lunch, packed lunch for the kids, took the kids to school, took the kids to an activity? And instead of saying thank you to them, babe, I really appreciate you did that. You're like, oh, yeah, well, big deal. But you want a pat on your back? I take the kids all the time. I cook dinner all the time. Like you cook dinner this one time and you want me to like have a whole parade for you. Like big deal. Again, you're condescending and you're entitled. So an example is that is you're never thanking your partner for their contributions. You don't thank them. Even if you're giving mutual effort, you should always show gratitude to your partner for what it is that they're doing. And it's not a tit for tat, like, oh, they didn't thank me. If you're trying to be a good PMDD partner, you need to be showing gratitude towards your partner, or else you're entitled. You're just expecting it. Like, oh, I'm in the relationship. This is what we do. And a lot of times, if you've been in a relationship for a long time and that's been their role and they've been playing it for so long, that's when you get to that point where it's like, oh, why do I have to thank them? They know that I'm thankful. They know that I appreciate it. You're just not wanting to say it. There's pride, there's ego, and there's entitlement. And another way that you're entitled in your relationship is there's this one-sided decision making. So you're making decisions that affect the both of you, but you're not even consulting your partner or asking their opinions or feelings about it. You're planning a date night and saying, we're going here. We're going to see this movie at this time. You didn't ask your partner what their plans were. You didn't ask them what their schedule was. You're just assuming that they're going to go. And then if they don't go, then all of a sudden an argument. So like with a lot of my private clients, it's planning vacations or making major purchases without discussing the partner first. And you're just like, it's my money too. Why do I have to ask you permission? That's the ego coming in because you're feeling entitled and you're feeling defensive because they may bring up like, hey, I'm really like offended that didn't consult me when you plan this. Oh, I have to consult you when I plan everything. Aren't I an adult? Don't I make money too? Like then you get into these arguments when your partner is just trying to let you know that they're not feeling like it's a partnership. They're feeling like it's one-sided. Another way that you're entitled in the relationship is you have this refusal to compromise. You're insisting on having things your way or the highway. You're not willing to meet your partner the halfway in any decisions or any discussions. It's kind of like, this is what I need, this is what I want, and that's it. And you can kind of shade that into like, oh, it's my boundaries. It's my about no, anytime you're trying to switch things up in the relationship, you have to have a discussion about it. I remember I did this when I wanted my partner to change, like I told you earlier, the way that he was speaking to me. I was like, listen, I understand that you get frustrated. I understand it's in your nature. When you get frustrated, when you get angry, when you get triggered, you yell and curse and all of these things. I said the compromise could be when you do these things and you know that it triggers me, and you know that it triggers my past trauma, can you just apologize afterwards? Like that was my compromise. I'm like, I might be able to endure this because I know it's not the true core of who you are and how you really feel. And I know you say things that you don't mean. And I know that you're working on it, but like after the fact, if you could just get to a point of apologizing for it, maybe it's something that I can get used to, and that was me at towards the very, very end. Because even after that, I was like disgusted with myself from even accepting that. I was pretty much like, I'm willing to accept this, what I consider verbal abuse, just like apologize to me afterwards. Like that's how I knew I was like, girl, like, and you know what? You know what he was like? I can't do that. That's when I knew. I think that's one of the way. I mean, there was many signs, but that's when I knew. I was like, okay, this is over, because I, even the compromise that I'm trying to make is just not even working. But when you're refusing to compromise, meaning you're always wanting to be the one in charge, to choose the restaurant, choose the activity without considering your partner, you're always wanting to be in charge. You're always wanting to say who's going to do what. Things need to be done your way or the highway, or else, things are going to be like you're not going to be happy. And the next thing is blaming your partner for everything, holding your partner responsible for any problems, for any conflicts in the relationship without reflecting on your contribution. And I've seen this a lot where it's like, PMDD is the problem. You're the problem because you have PMDD. Like, everything's about PMDD. Even if everything's not about PMDD, that is the kind of response. And when you feel entitled, you feel like almost like you have a disorder. So like, it's obviously you. Like, if we have issues, I remember my ex-partner said to me, you're always, because I said, hey, my trigger, like I'm communicating, because I use these terms all the time with my private clients. And I'm like, hey, I'm just triggered because of this. And he said something like, you're always triggered. Everything's a trigger for you. And I was like, what? But that's that sense of entitlement of like, you're just accusing your partner of being the cause of everything. And he said to me once, I don't have a problem in this relationship. You have a problem. Everything is a problem in this relationship because of you. Like, you're always causing fights. You're always causing arguments. Everything's because of you. So I was being blamed for everything when I knew that it was mutual things that we were not, on the same page about, but it was kind of like, it's you, it's you, it's you. That's because you have this sense of entitlement. And then the next way that you're feeling entitled or acting entitled is you're prioritizing your needs over theirs. You're putting your desires and your needs above your partner's, expecting them to accommodate you. Here's a perfect example. Perfect example. You want to have sex. Your partner's in PMDD, your partner's sick, your partner's whatever, and they don't want to have sex. They're not in the mood to have sex. They're all of these things. And you're like, all I'm asking you is for some affection. And you can't even give me that. I can't have affection from anybody else. And you can't even get, like, you're throwing the fact that your partner has a debilitating disorder that is preventing them from being physical with you, and blaming them for it, and saying, because you want sex, because that's what you need, because that's what you want. You're prioritizing your needs. You're not even asking how they're doing. I remember I was like dating this guy after I got my herniated disc injury. And that's what I remember dating and being like, dang, like, these people are cutthroat. Like, they are very, like, I'm a pretty caring and considerate person. I was dating this other guy, and he had a knee injury, and I was going to this conference where it's like a fitness conference. And I remember getting like a one of those knee braces for him. That was like over $100, but I was like getting the knee brace, and I gave it to him the next time I saw him. And I was just like, hopefully this helps you, because I know that you mentioned like your knee. And he was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. So that's the type of person that I am. And that's the person that I assume that other people are. But I was like dating this guy, and I just had the herniated disc like injury where I could barely walk. I was like scooting around. And then when I felt good enough to like be up on my feet, he invited me on a date. And on the date, he was just like, hey, let's go do this, let's go do that, and let's go do. And I'm like, I got this injury. Like, what are you? And I remember it reminded me of when I was with my ex-partner, and we went to Mexico, and he had a back injury, and surgery and all the things. And then I had scheduled these activities. It was actually the last time I saw him was in Mexico, which is very like nostalgic. Like, that's very weird. Like, to this day, I can't believe that the last time I saw my ex was in Mexico. That's like a weird thing. But I had planned all these excursions, and then one of the excursions was camel riding, and one of them was ATV riding, and one of them was not skydiving. What was it? A zip line. And then I remember him saying to me, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you would plan all of these activities for me, knowing that I had this back injury, and it hit me, but it was like the way it was a delivery, because the way he said it was just like so petty, like did it on purpose. Whereas when I told him the activities, he never said to me, babe, if he would have said to me, babe, I'm sorry. Like I appreciate the fact that you plan these activities, but there's no way I'm going to be able to do that because of my injury with my back. Like I appreciate it, but I'm not going to be able to go. Instead, he went on it. And then when we got on the activity, that's when he made that petty comment. And I remember being so the big O offended. Like, what do you mean? Because I would have never, I didn't think that way. Like, I wasn't doing it intentionally. I thought, like, remember, we connected with doing active things. And so I thought that was going to make him happy. And so when someone did that to me, I was shocked because I felt like I communicated to you, like, hey, I can barely walk. And then I said I could barely walk, and you want to go on a hike and you want to do that. Like, I felt like that's what they wanted to do. So they were like, oh, let's do what I want to do. And I'm not even going to consider the condition that you're in. So I really understood what my ex-partner was saying, but I just felt like there was a lack of communication. Like 100%, if he would have mentioned to me that he wasn't able to do it because of his back, I would have canceled it. Like, absolutely. I never want my partner to suffer because of something that, you know, I want to do. Like, because I won't even enjoy it if I know that you're not enjoying it. So another way that you can be entitled in your relationship is using guilt to get your way. I've seen this so many times where you manipulate your partner by making them feel guilty and responsible for your happiness and pressuring you to meet their needs. And it's almost like, I'm feeling so horrible in PMDD and it's your job to make me feel better. Or you have PMDD and it's affecting me and it's your job to make me feel better. I've seen this on both sides with my private clients. Both of you have the ability to use guilt to get your way. And this is the common statement, and my partner used this all the time, my ex-partner. If you really loved me, you would do this for me. Or if you really loved me, you would never have done this. Like, it's almost like what my ex-partner said without the exact words. Like, if you really loved me, you would have never asked me to go on this activity knowing that my back hurt. If you really loved me, you would have never done that. Like, it's almost like putting a condition on something and making them feel guilty and pressuring them to do what you want them to do. And the next way is being unwilling to give back. Like, you're consistently receiving all of this love, receiving this support and this care, and you're not providing anything. I had a private client where I worked really deeply with them where she was an empath and she consistently gave and gave and gave. That was in her nature. She enjoyed doing it. And what happened was she was such a giver that he just became the ultimate receiver. And he just kept taking and taking and taking without any regard to giving back, to where she got burnt out and got depleted. And then it was like all of a sudden, you know, she stopped giving. And then he was kind of like, what's wrong with you? Like, then it was a problem because he was in that way of like, he was expecting that emotional support, but then he was unavailable for her level of support, meaning he needed physical touch, sex. He needed chores. He needed, stuff taken care of. He needed words of affirmation. He needed all these things, and she needed acts of service. Well, she was giving all of his love languages, but then when it came to acts of service, which was her primary one, she wasn't getting it. So she got to a point, and you will get to a point where when the levels are so uneven, you'll get to a point one day where you're like, wait a minute, this is not fair. This is not right. Like, I don't deserve this. And when you start saying statements like that to yourself, be very careful because the PMDD breakups are a coming. When you start looking at, I remember doing this in my PMDD relationship where I took care of the finances on where I lived because we were long distance, and my partner took care of the finances where he lived. That was an agreement that we made from the beginning. But you have to think, in the beginning, the initial agreement was that we were only going to be apart for 2 years. We ended up being apart for a whopping 5 years. So over the course, I would say around year 3, I started to be like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Like, we have a house. I'm paying all the bills in the house. He was being a roommate. So the bills were completely different. Managing a house with a child and a dog was way different from managing being a roommate with that's it. So I was just kind of like, I feel like he should be kind of contributing to the household. All his things are here. When he comes home, he wants to be treated like the head of the household. Like, I feel like he should start contributing towards the household. And he was just kind of like what I said, number nine, unwilling to give back. Like, what do you mean? Like, no, like pretty much. And I blame that on me. I blame that on me because I should have never agreed to that if I knew, which I didn't know. Like, I didn't know that at some point it was going to get old and be like, it feels like I'm single, but I'm in a relationship. I remember thinking that I'm like, I'm paying all my bills. I'm doing all the chores. I'm doing all the things, but I'm in a marriage. Like, I was like single, but married, and it became uneven to me. And by the time I wanted to change that, because I realized that it was now a problem because I was getting resentful of it, he was unwilling to change because there was a sense of entitlement. Like, it's been fine all this time. And again, I take full responsibility of that because had I known what I knew then, now, or whatever, however you say it, I would have never agreed to that. But sometimes you could be in that place where you agree to things in the beginning of your relationship. And then at some point they get old and you want something different. And for me, I'm a person that needs to be able to have a partner in a relationship that grows over time, where you're flexible, where if I bring something to you and I say, hey, I know this used to work for me before, but it's no longer working for me, that you're in that position where you're like, okay, babe, let's work this out. Like, let's find a way that works for you. Because I believe that as you grow, people are going to change. Your needs are going to change. Your desires are going to change. But if you're with someone that's unwilling to change, unwilling to be flexible, then you're always going to get to that point where it's like, okay, well, I'm not actually willing to budge on this because it's actually bothering me a lot right now. I'm going to need you to do something about it. And then now you're in that fork in the road. And the number 10 reason as to how you can be entitled in your relationship is expecting perfection, demanding perfection from your partner and getting upset when they make mistakes without recognizing that everybody has flaws. So this is one of the ones that I am guilty of, and I didn't know it. I didn't see it. But when she told it to me and she provided examples, like, for example, you criticize your partner for minor mistakes or imperfections without allowing them room to grow, and like make a mistake. Like, I see this with a lot of partners where they just learning about PMDD, and you're like, why don't you know more about this? And you need to go read a book and you need to like research it for yourself. And you like, there's almost this entitlement of, I'm the one with the disorder, so you need to go out there and get the tools to learn how to manage the way that you treat me that triggers me. And I wasn't like this with my partner about PMDD, like, because PMDD is my business and I was writing my dissertation on it. Like, I was fine with like providing all the PMDD tools. But I noticed when my partner used to, like, I started getting very critical of my partner towards the end. Um, because my needs weren't met. When I had to really journal and dig into this, I was like, why was I so critical? Why was I so judgmental? Why? If your needs aren't met in the relationship, you're going to start to pick at your partner. And that's what was happening. I was in a place in the relationship because okay, let me explain. I was in a place in the relationship where I really needed my partner. I really needed my person. I needed physical touch. I needed affection. I needed quality time. I needed support. I needed my partner. That's the whole, when you get into this realm of feeling entitled, you have to get to the root of it. And I had to do the work and dig and dig and dig to get to this point. But I did an action that seemed horrible, like criticizing my partner and picking at them, but it was just because I wanted them. Have you ever seen the baby that like cries and cries and cries because it just wants you to pick it up? Like that was me. I was criticizing my partner, like, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, because I wasn't comfortable with the long distance relationship anymore. I needed my partner on a day-to-day basis. Everything felt so heavy for me, especially towards the end of my relationship where I was going through my dissertation. I had gotten robbed. There was like a lot of things that happened to where I just needed my person. And that sense of entitlement was like, what's so wrong with me wanting and needing my partner? Like, what's so wrong with it? I remember thinking to myself, like, of course I'm acting like this because I need my partner. Like, I need my partner. And I just remember feeling so lonely, but in a relationship, feeling so single, but in a relationship, feeling so alone, but in a relationship, feeling so emotionally disconnected, but in a relationship. I was just like, I felt entitled to more than what I was given. And I could communicate what I had communicated what I needed, which made me feel more entitled because it's like, I'm giving you the tools, I'm giving you the answer to the test. Back in the day, I used to go to school and, when my mom used to homeschool me, they used to have the answer key. And in the answer key had all the answers. So like we would have our workbooks. And then there was this answer key that had all the bubbles filled in. And I felt like what I was doing for my partner was giving him the answer key of what I needed in the relationship and saying, like, I'm not even leaving it for you to figure out. I'm saying, this is what I need. Here's what I need. Just provide it to me because I can't give it to myself. Otherwise, I'm in a relationship with myself. And when he was unwilling to do that, I said, I can't do this. Because when you're entitled, you're like, it's my way. Like my daddy used to say, I used to do, it's your way or the highway. It's my way or the highway. And that was my mentality. Like you either meet these demands of what I need in this particular way, or we're done. And in my mind, I'm like, surely, again, there's that phrase, entitlement. If he loves me, he's going to make these changes. And because he was not willing to make those changes, that was the end. And so I felt justified in that. So a lot of times if you're feeling entitled, you may feel like, yeah, that's what I should have done. Like you may feel deserving of that. Like you did the right thing. Well, the problem is after that divorce breakup happened, I went to date months later and I had the same mentality. I remember this so clearly that I did this, I think I did it like there was a pattern of it. This is how I know when I went to the retreat, I was like, oh, like you ever listen to my podcast and I'm talking about something and you're like, oh yeah, that's me. Like that was me at the retreat when it really clicked for me. When I listened to what she said, then took time to journal about it and then it clicked. I'm like, yeah, I do that. So when I was dating, it was a couple guys that I went out and they were nice guys, just nice guys, really nice guys. And then they did something that I didn't like because I'm really big on consistency. Like if you're doing something that I really, really like and then you stop or you switch it up on me, I don't like that. Because I'm a proponent of don't start something that you're not able to continue because that's how I am. If I'm going to be texting you all day long and giving you heart emojis and all these things, like that's just going to be me because it's genuine to who I am. Because if you start doing something and then you stop, I think that you weren't being genuine in the beginning. Like you were just doing it for a particular purpose. That's what I think because I'm like, what, like, are you manipulating me? So you did this to get me, and then now you're not continuing. So remember the first guy that did that? He switched up. I think I did the one where it's like you're expecting perfection because this guy, Everything was going great. We were about to go out of town, just like a staycation kind of thing. And he got triggered. I remember he got triggered and pretty much dropped me off like back at home and was like, I can't do this. Like maybe we should do this at another time. And I was like, what the heck? So because I felt entitled and he dropped me off and we didn't go on the trip because he was triggered because of something. It was like something must have triggered, like, because I remember he had also had childhood trauma. And I think it was something I was like, I think I mentioned it on another podcast. I was like 5 or 6 minutes late and I was doing something with my daughter before I left to make sure she was good. And then he was like triggered by that. So he was just like, he had an attitude, like a whole thing. Like I saw a completely different side of him. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I don't do well with that. Like when you switch up on me. So he pretty much dropped me off and was like, maybe we should do this another time. I was shooketh. I'm like, you picked me up. We were supposed to go to this place. We didn't go to the place. You dropped me back off. And then the next day, I remember he said, good morning, Rose. Like, you want to meet for a chat? Like, you want to meet for coffee? To kind of like talk about everything. Do you know? I never talked to that man again. Not a day in my life. Like the phone, the text is still in my phone. Like, absolutely not. I was not about to talk to him again. Like, what are you talking about? Because in my mind, I was so entitled that I felt like, how dare you? Like, because here's the thing, I tried to have the conversation, in a calm way. Like I wasn't even arguing because I was very confused. I was so confused. Like, what? I understand that you're triggered. Like I deal with people triggered all the time, but like what is going on? Like where are we going? Why are you dropping me off at home? Like he was not able to communicate anything. He just put the music on and was just driving. And I was just sitting there lost in the sauce. And so when he dropped me off, I never spoke to him again. I remember because at first because this is what I'll do. I'll start asking. I will never ghost you. I will never block you or all these things without giving you ample opportunity to reconcile. Like that's the part of the entitlement I don't have. I don't just like shut you out. I'm like, hey, let's talk about this, or like, can you at least just tell me what's going on? Or I'll give you an olive branch. But if you reject me and you're just like, nope, but then later on you want to like do all the things because basically when he was saying he wanted to meet for coffee, he wanted to explain himself and explain what was going on. He wanted to basically do what I was asking for him to do the night before. But I was so entitled. I was like, no. Now, in some people's eyes, they would be like, yeah, I don't blame you. But in some people's eyes, it's like the expectation of perfection. Like I was expecting him to be perfect and be able to manage all of his triggers perfectly. And sometimes a lot of you are like that. When your partner slips up and starts yelling and cursing at you and calling you out of your name and all these things, instead of them, when they apologize, you accepting the apology, you're pretty much like, nope, I'm going to hold it over your head. I'm going to like shut down affection, attention, all of these things because you offended me. So I was in that place of that time. I was like, nope, I'm not talking to him again. It's his problem. I was nothing but nice to him. I didn't like do anything. I didn't even know what was going on. So a lot of times when you're entitled, you get into that victim mode. In all honesty, I did do something wrong. I was like 5 or 6 minutes late. In the grand scheme of things, if you've heard my podcast before, I'm not an advocate for. I'm not okay. Not that I'm not an advocate. I am not really good at time management. That is one of the things that I need to work on the most. I need to work so hard on that because I have so many things going on. And if I have an extra 5 minutes, I'm always trying to cram something into that. But the lesson that I learned with that is time is important to some people and they take that as a form of disrespect. My ex-partner was like that. When I was late picking him up from the airport, he was so disrespected. His mood was off. And I remember like in the beginning minimizing it. It's like, what's the big deal? Like I have a lot going on. Like it's not like I'm sitting at home watching the Real Housewives of whoever. Like I'm cleaning, I'm cooking, I'm doing all these things. But it is a form of disrespect for some people. But when you're entitled, you're kind of like, hey, I'm here, aren't I? Like pretty much rolling up to the airport, like, you mad because I'm late? Like I'm here. Like that's the way I was. So I had that sense of entitlement. And turns out when I was late with this other guy, I had the same sense of entitlement. So I had to really humble myself and work on that and say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for being entitled, with not giving him the opportunity to even explain himself. And then another instance with that was, I think it was another guy I dated where he just wasn't consistent with communication. So like I'm really big on that with text communication. Um, and I cut him off, and and then there was like a third person, and I was like, okay, I see a pattern here where if someone doesn't give me the treatment that I feel like I deserve, I cut them off and I feel entitled to do so. And I remember being like, I never thought that that was a bad thing. I thought that was having standards and morals and values and valuing myself. When in reality, I wasn't leaving any room for any flaws in the other person. Nobody's perfect. People have lives going on. People have things going on. So if there's a delay in a text message, if there's a delay in communication, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to manipulate you or that they're trying to do something to you. And so what ended up happening is I had this pain of regret of feeling so entitled all the time. So that's presently what I've just been working on. And I'm just been like, no one's perfect. My level of standards when it comes to dating and relationships is not the same as other people. Just like other people value time. If someone's late for me, I don't care, because I'm one of those people where if you're late, I'll just find something to do. Like I have plenty of emails to answer, play on my phone. Actually, it's probably work related. Like I have things to do. And when you show up, like I'm not like grilling you or have an attitude, but some people are like that. So I think it's a matter of finding out what the other person values and humbling yourself in order to meet them in a place where it's like, okay, I'm understanding. I'm understanding of what it is that you need and like what's important to you. And I am presently working on that, and I'm going to give you some tools like I always do. But then I'm going to create a workbook for you like I did. I know you guys really enjoyed the workbook that I did with the Fresh Start, and I'm going to put the workbook for entitlement. So, if you listen to this and you're like, yeah, Dr. Rose, that's me. I need the notes on this. I need the ebook on this. Then it's going to be in the show notes. But the first tool is to just recognize your behavior. You really have to be self-aware. And I know it's so hard because every time that I've done this, I've not thought that I was doing anything wrong. So it's like an aha moment. I was just like, wow, I had no idea. I thought I was doing the right thing because in my mind, I thought, well, if they're starting off like this, it's going to continue. It's going to continue. It's going to continue. And then I would make up a story like, I don't want to deal with this for the rest of my life. I start catastrophizing when in reality, they could have just had a bad day. They could have just had a bad moment. And you have to take responsibility for your actions and work on changing it. That's what I'm working on. So when I feel like I'm ready to cut someone off because they're not doing something that I think that I deserve because I feel entitled, I have to pull back. I have to detach from my expected outcome. I have to detach from, if they liked me, they would. If they loved me, they would. If they cared about me, they would. That's my perception. They could absolutely like me, absolutely love me, absolutely care about me, and do it in their own way because they're a completely separate person. So it's not my job to tell them the way to love me, to like me, to care about me. They have to do it in their own way. And then we have to like meet in the middle in a way that translates. But I can't steal their way of loving me, liking me, and caring about me because it doesn't match what it is that I need. I can't discredit their efforts because in their mind, they may be doing everything that they know to do. But if I cut them off before they have the opportunity to show it, then it's not going to go anywhere because no one is going to be able to have my same brain and give me what it is that I need at every given moment. Some moments you just have to accept what your partner is giving you and appreciate it. And that's the next tool, is to practice gratitude. You have to express gratitude for what they are doing. If they text you later on because they had stuff going on, be grateful that they text you back and just say, oh, okay, I understand. And I know a lot of times the ego is like, you're just accepting their breadcrumbs. No, people have lives outside of you. And it's that demanding of constant attention. Just because you need your cup to be filled all the time doesn't mean that they're in that place where they're at your beck and call to do it, even if they're your partner. They have other aspects of their lives. They have work, they have friends, they have hobbies. They're still an individual. They're not directly linked to you to where their identity is lost in you. And the biggest thing that really helps with this is open communication. Having open communications with your partner about the expectations and needs, it really helps for you to have that level of mutual understanding. Meaning, if that guy that I was dating would have told me, like, hey, Rose, if you're late, I consider that disrespect and it really triggers me. And then it's like listening to their concerns and their feelings without dismissing them. Because I could be like, what's the big deal? Like I told you I did with my ex-partner. Like he tried to tell me so many times to be punctual, to be on time, and I dismissed it. And I had to take responsibility for that and say, that was inconsiderate. And I was feeling entitled because I was thinking about all the stuff that I had going on and not really thinking about how I made him feel when he was standing at the airport waiting for me to pick him up, when he was expecting me to come rushing through the airport, with open arms and a smile and all these things. Like that moment was for him. And I stole that away from him every single time that I was late. And I had to take responsibility for that and be like, oh my gosh, even though a lot of times I was in the house getting things ready for him, he would probably have appreciated me being on time even more than me having everything in the house perfect. But it took me some time to really think about that and really develop, which is the next tool, which is develop empathy. I have to see the situation from my partner's perspective or the person that I'm dating perspective, from their point of view. Consider their feelings, consider their needs, not throw them away. And the last thing is seek professional help. I had to have a third party call me out and give me the tools to help me with this. And that's what I do for my private clients. And so, it's a lot of times us as counselors, it is a requirement when we're in training to have someone that we lean on as a mentor. And I have a counselor that I lean on to help me through not only through what I'm going through with everything in my life, but then also the things that go on with me as a result of everything that I take on with all of my private clients. I have to have an outlet to express things and to process things. And so I'm not telling you to do something that I don't already do. I wouldn't be helpful to you if I wasn't getting the help myself. And I invest in that. And it is not, it is not cheap. Actually, what I charge for my services is a fraction of what I pay for my own help because I try to be affordable for everybody, especially for the amount of time. Because, if you're my private client, my sessions run long. But when I have sessions with my counselor, it's like 45 minutes to an hour. That's it. My sessions are 90 minutes and longer. I go over with my private clients a lot, a lot. And I have other counterparts that are also counselors that kind of like bill like attorneys, which I'm like, oh my God. Like they're like, yeah, if you go 5 minutes over, like it's like billable time. Like you're now getting charged every 5 minutes for every 5 minutes you go over. And I'm like, whoo. So if I don't do that, but if private sessions are something that you need, go to inlovewithpmdd.com and book those for you. I only take a certain amount of clients per month so that I can give you the attention that you deserve. But feeling entitled is not something that a lot of us do on purpose. So I don't want you to feel bad if you're listening to this and you're like, dang, Dr. Rose, I do that. I feel so bad. Like I want to change. What I would say is get the workbook, get that I'm going to put in the show notes here, get the private sessions to really work through how you feel entitled, what you can do about it, all of the things. And the biggest thing that really helps me when I realized that I had this issue of feeling entitled and I had that level of regret, because I remember cutting off someone that I was like, man, that was a really good person. We had a lot of things in common. I went too far because it wears off. So like if you cut someone off in PMDD, when you go into your follicular phase, you're going to be like, oh, they weren't that bad. Like how many times have you done that with your partner? When you cut them off and then you're just thinking to yourself, I should have just gave them another chance, or I should have let them explain, or because you still want to be with them, because some people you cut off and then some people I've cut off during the dating process and they absolutely deserved it because they were just not the right person for me. But I learned how to cut people off in love. I did. I learned how to let them go in love and not be bitter and resentful and entitled and all of these things. It just wasn't going to work. And then some people, you can prematurely let them go and not even give them a chance. And I've made the mistake of doing that. And living with that regret is what caused me to really do the work, because I didn't want to let go of someone that could have been good for me. I didn't want to continue this pattern of blocking people, letting people go that actually could be good for me, but they're just, they need to know more about me. They need to know what makes me tick. I need to learn what makes them tick. Like I told you, the guy with the time management thing. Like I didn't know that was a thing for him. So I think when you're dating and when you're in a relationship, if there's things that trigger you, like bring it out, like let them know so that they're able to get to a point where they can express it. So I really hope this helps you. And if you're in that place of being entitled in your PMDD relationship, again, don't feel bad, but please, 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 before you regret it, make sure you do the work to change it in a way that's going to positively impact your relationship and get you out of that place of feeling like I deserve this. And if I don't get it, I'm breaking up. Because that's what we call the PMDD monthly breakups, because that means it's very impulsive. When you have PMDD monthly breakups, it's very impulsive. So there's a difference between a PMDD monthly breakup, which is I'm impulsively just shouting out that we should just break up in the middle of an argument, versus you methodically thinking about it and saying we're not right for each other. So we're going to part ways in a way and I want to do it in the healthiest way possible. That's what I did with my ex. But these other people that I dated, it was like, bye, 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 bye. Like, because I was in that phase where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to beg you. I think Fantasia had a song. She was like, I ain't going to beg you. That's how I felt. I ain't going to beg you to love me the way I deserve to be loved. You either going to love me the way I deserve to be loved, or I'm going to go find somebody that will. What did I say to myself? Because I said it to my friend. I was like, not with it being 8 billion people in this world. If it's 8 billion people in this world and I'm begging you and I'm begging one, there's a problem. That's the scarcity mindset. And I strongly do believe in that. So when we're talking about cutting people, I do believe that. I do believe that it's not a form of entitlement. And I could probably do a whole other episode on what entitlement is not. And the basis of that is entitlement is not walking away from a situation that is not good for you, that is not healthy for you, where you're not being treated the way that you deserve to be treated, and they're not trying to do anything about it. Meaning you've communicated it to them and they're not even trying to change. That's my biggest thing. If you have not communicated it, like I would not walk away until you've communicated it, and I would not walk away until they've actually told you, which is what my ex said. I'm not doing that. If my ex would have been like, oh, I see what you mean, like I'm gonna work on that, we would have never got a divorce, because I would have just gave him time to work on it and waited for change behaviors. But when you tell me I can't do that, that's not in my character, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. that because I still love the person. Like, I'm not going to force you into a situation that you really, obviously, you don't want to be in it. So, like, I'm going to help us both out since you don't want to be the person to say it. Like, for me, I have no issue. But sometimes I make mistakes when I take it too far and prematurely, because it's so easy for me to cut people off, probably because of my childhood trauma, then I can prematurely do it and then regret it later on. And what I mean by that is not give the person a chance. So if your partner is trying, give them a chance. If your person you're dating is trying, give them a chance. If they stop trying, you have my permission. So that's the way you can tell between what's entitlement and what's not. So I really hope this helped you. All right. Love you. Talk to you later next time. I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD range and all of these things so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship. So you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.